Good morning, students. Peace be upon you all. This is Dr.Muayyad. Going to continue with our course Select Readings. The book is published and copyrighted by Oxford University Press. It is by Lindley and Jean Bernard, Upper Intermediate, 2nd edition. I thank you very much for listening to me, and I wish that all the bad circumstances would come to an end and we'll come back to our usual classes. Now we have the reading passage on page 63 to 66 by Madeline Burley Ellen from Human Resource Magazine. Please look up the question in front of you. Fill in the spaces with one word from words in the box below. The words are listen, supervisor, employee, serious, free, learned, words, for, entertain, and daydreaming. You are required to choose one word to fill in the spaces below. Number 1, there are space levels of listening. 2, Bill is in at Dave's company. 3, effective listening is a space skill. 4, level 2 listener listens mainly to space. 5, the author's purpose in the passage is space. Now go back to the passage, skim it as quickly as possible, and try to find the answers to these questions. Okay, thank you very much. Number 1, we have 3. Number 2, employee. Number 3, learned. Number 4, words. Number 5, serious. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to give you some vocabularies. These are important. The vocabularies are the following. They are synonyms. In fact, we have exchange. It means conversation. Swamped, too much work. Extra means additional. Catch up, finish. Essential, prominent. Component, element. Attribute, feature. Clear up, illustrate. Refraining, avoid. Abstain from. Assume, suppose. Enhance, support. Efficiency, proficiency. Anticipate, expect. Activate, motivate. Alert, active. Bonds, reflect. Grilled, feel uncomfortable. Security, safely or safety. Internalized, comprehended. Impact, effect. Now a summary to this reading passage, a reading passage by Madeline Burley Ellen. The passage gives an example of a good listening. It is an important element in the workplace as it is practiced by Dave, the supervisor, with his employee Bill. Dave establishes a good caring behavior as being responsible for his actions, can change himself early, doesn't judge others, and allow others to be equal to his place. Listening is a learned skill. People are only about 35% good listeners. 3 levels of listening can be given. Level 1, a good listener is a person who looks for areas of interest in the speaker's talk. Level 2, merely listening person to the speaker's talk, but listens to the words spoken without enough understanding. Level 3, a fake listener is the level who thinks of unrelated matters and responds aggressively to others. Level 1 is the most effective. To be a good listener, one has to be attentive, interested in the speaker's needs, not involved in personal matters, and good users of verbal clues as well as gestures. By applying these guidelines, it is possible for a person to be a good listener. We have an exercise on page 67. Please read the exercise and try to find the answers from the reading passage. After you read understanding the text, A. Comprehension, scanning for details. Read the statements below and write a true or false. Number 1. According to the author, listening is one of the most important skills a person needs to be a good supervisor. 2. The article states that good listening skills come naturally to most people. 3. The author's breakdown of listening efficiency: level 1 is the most effective and level 3 is the least effective. 4. The fact that most English words have many meanings support the idea that people don't communicate with words alone. 5. A level 1 listener looks for an area of interest in the talker's message. 6. A level 2 listener pretends to listen but is really thinking about something else. 7. A level 2 listener listens mainly to words but doesn't really try to understand what the speaker is getting at. 8. A level 3 listener responds defensively or becomes overly emotional. 9. A level 3 listener listens with both understanding and respect. Now, your answers to the questions. Number 1 is true. Number 2 is F, false. Number 3 is it true. Number 4 is it true. Number 5 is it true. Number 6 is false. Number 7 is true. Number 8 is it true. And number 9 is false. Thank you very much. Now, the exercise B, the same page 67, comprehension, identifying the author's purpose. For each of the items below, fill in the correct circle. Number 1, the author's main purpose in writing this article was to: A. Help people become better listeners. B. Entertain readers. C. Explain why some people are better listeners than others. D. Complain about the fact that some people are bad listeners. 2. The purpose of including the opening conversation between Bill and Dave was to: A. Give readers an example of poor communication on the job. B. Entertain readers with an example of good communication on the job. C. Provide an example of good listening skills mentioned in the article. D. Give an example of a conversation that the writer had with an employee. Your answers to 1. Yes, number 1 is A. Help people become better listeners. And 2. C. Provide an example of a good listening skill mentioned in the article. Thank you very much. Now we have an exercise on page 68. See vocabulary. Underline these words in the reading passage on pages 68-66. Then complete each sentence with the correct word. The words are anticipate, internalized, mutually, acknowledge, assume, attitude. 1. Alan doesn't space me in meetings. Even if I raise my hand to ask a question, he just ignores me. 2. If you space what someone is going to ask for, you are more prepared to understand what they want. 3. Being a good listener can be space beneficial for the listener and the speaker. The speaker trusts and respects the listener, and the listener truly understands what the speaker needs and wants. 4. If you have the space that what your employee say doesn't matter, your employees won't respect or trust you. 5. I practiced summarizing what people were saying to me, and after about a month, I had a spaceless call. 6. Don't space someone didn't hear what you said if they don't answer right away. They may be taking a moment to think about the reply. Now, your answers to this question. Number 1 is acknowledge. Number 2, anticipate. Number 3, mutually. Number 4, attitude. Number 5, internalized. Number 6 is assume. Now we go to D. Consider the issues. Work with a partner to answer the questions below. Do you agree or disagree with each of the statements below? Tick your answers, then write why you agree or disagree. Number 1, I'm responsible for my actions, feelings, and behavior. Agree, disagree. B, I don't have the power to change others, only myself. Agree, disagree. C. Refraining from judging others will assist me in listening to them effectively. Agree, disagree. D. I allow others to be in equal level with myself. Agree, disagree. Students answered this question. A. I'm responsible for my own actions, feelings, and behavior. A student said, I agree, and the reason is I want to develop self respect. B. I don't have the power to change others, only myself. A student answered, agree, because I want to keep on my relations with others. C. Refraining from judging others will assist me in listening to them effectively. A student answered, agree. When judging others, I don't feel good about myself. D. I allow others to be on an equal level with myself. A student answered, I agree, because avoiding superiority leads to success. Or another answer, I want others to tell me my faults and weaknesses. This is the end of this exercise on page 68. Thank you. Now, building vocabulary on page 69, using adverbs and intensifiers. Adverbs of manner usually follow a verb. These words usually end in ly and tell how or in what way something is done, happens, or is true. For example, these values influence Dave to listen emphatically, communicate openly, and describe behavior non-judgmentally. An intensifier shows to what degree something is true. Intensifiers can modify an adjective or an adverb. For example, I'm really discouraged. How discouraged are you? He was speaking too quickly for me to understand. How quickly? Other words used as intensifiers include very, quite, totally, pretty, seriously, absolutely, partly, somewhat, moderately, extremely, completely. There are some examples in front of you. Please read and try to underline the intensifiers. The movie was very scary. The truth is rarely pure and never simple. The girl is extremely talented. I dreamt of an amazingly beautiful woman talking to me. You performed exceptionally well at the recital. There are several incredibly talented students in your school. She performed remarkably well in the spelling contest. I'm not particularly proficient in singing. You are not old enough to drive a car. Now we have an exercise. Read the conversation below and underline the intensifiers. The conversation between Joe and Jane. Joe is an employee. Jane, I'm totally discouraged about the way things have been going on the job. It never goes the way I expected it to, and it seems like you're almost never around anymore. Jane, supervisor, that's completely ridiculous. You are imagining things. I'm the first to get here in the morning and at the very last to leave at night. Who told you that you have the right to criticize the boss? If you are not extremely careful, you could get fired. In this conversation, the intensifiers are Jane, I'm totally, and then we have almost never. You are almost never. Then we have completely, that is completely ridiculous. And then we have the very last, very last. And finally, we have extremely careful, extremely. Now, B, complete the following statement using as many adverbs as you can think of. Refer back to the article if you need inspiration. Number 1, a good supervisor listens attentively to his employees. An effective communicator speaks remarkably well with his interlocutors. On page 70, we have reading skill, recognize sentence transitions. Sentence transition are words and phrases that build bridges between sentences to help readers follow the writer's ideas. Here are three ways to make a sentence transition. Number one, repeat a word or a word that almost the same meaning from the previous sentence. For example, you've just read an example of good listening. Listening is probably the most essential component of being a successful supervisor. So here a repetition of the word listening. Number two, use a pronoun to refer to a word or phrase in the previous sentence. For example, good listeners suspend judgment and are empathetic to the other person's feelings. They can see things from the other person's viewpoint. So we have they with good listeners. Three, use a connecting word or phrase such as however, on the other hand, for example, as a result, needless to say, in addition, or therefore. Effective listening is a learned skill. It doesn't happen automatically for most people. In addition, there are few words for listening, but there are punishments for not listening. We have the word in addition. Now, exercise A, analyzing the reading, underline the words or phrases that connect each of the following pairs of sentences from the reading. Number one, Dave was establishing a caring and understanding environment with Bill. He did this by having the attitude about people that included the following values. Here, the transition is he as a pronoun, he with Dave. Two, on average, people only are about 35% efficient as listeners. This lack of effective listening often results in missed opportunities. We have repetition of effective listening and listening. Three, don't let the other person hook you. This can happen when you get personally involved. We have this as a pronoun. Four, many people tend to assume listening is basically the same thing as hearing, a dangerous misconception that leads to believing that effective listening is instinctive. As a result, supervisors make little effort to develop listening skills and acknowledgingly neglect a vital communication function. So we have connector as a result. 5. There are thousands of words in the English vocabulary. The average adult in the United States uses 500 of these words most often. We have repetition, English vocabulary, and words. Now exercise on page 71, applying the reading skill. Read the article below. Complete the sentences with words or phrases from the box. The words are in addition, as a result, however, for instance, therefore, needless to say, just as, she, this, resistant. Please look at the reading passage, read it carefully, and try to use the words in the box. Now we have the word therefore in space number 1. 2, for instance. 3, she. 4, this. 5, in addition. 6, resistant. 7, needless to say. 8, as a result. 9, however. And 10, gestures. We come to an end of our lecture today. Have a very wonderful time and see you soon. Thank you very much.